Thank you for tuning in to Koppen Comic. I'm Brian Koppen with comic Meredith Hackman. Meredith Hackman, how the hell are you?
I'm doing great, Brian. How are you?
Doing good. Thank you so much for coming on. We follow her everywhere. She's Big Mare on Twitter, BIG_MER. But she's also, this is hilarious, best place to cry at work on Instagram, in addition to meredithhackman.com. And so, like, there, we follow you there. What kind of stuff do you have coming out that we can kind of figure out about when we're on your socials?
I have a couple of stand-up shows coming up in February, assuming Omicron does its calming down thing, and hopefully more stand-up shows to come. The less and less afraid I get of going outside.
Have you been afraid, or is a lot? I mean, is the LA weather good enough where a lot of the shows can be outside and a little bit safer?
Oh yeah, I mean LA is ridiculous. It's currently January, and I literally was going to take the garbage out. I walked by a girl in a bathing suit hanging out by the pool getting tan. I was like, this is life. I could have been here so long ago, and I was in cold New York City like an asshole, being like, but the museums,
Like they have no world-class museums in Los Angeles, right?
Right. Well, that's what they tell us, right? They're like, LA, there's no culture there. That's what you stay on the East Coast for. It's cold, but all the culture. They have culture here. Did you know about that?
No, yeah, and but also, like, if you're not taking advantage of it out in New York City, which I'm not, like who the fuck cares? It's just like you have to also like driving, like LA seems to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me to be strip mall separated by traffic, all of which seems a little bit gross to me. Am I incorrect?
Well, I don't know that you're incorrect, but inside the strip malls are high-end dining facilities that you don't
Sure.
expect, art installations. It is a strip mall and it is disgusting, but it's also beautiful. I mean, you're acting like New York isn't disgusting. New York is similarly disgusting, but with better architecture.
Yeah, but also the traffic. It's just like
But also the traffic.
I moved cross country from Chicago, or I guess half country from Chicago to New York, like in a little CarMax Porsche. But by the time you got to New York, you're like, I can't just fucking like have a car that I care about and move it to alternate sides because of parking or whatever every other day. It's like, fuck that. I don't want to worry about it. So if you don't have a car, it can just be, you're on the train all the time. With Omicron, it's just kind of a dangerous place to be. But like, yeah. So I mean, did traffic and your love for cars or hatred of the subway kind of influence your move to the West Coast, or no?
I mean, you know me, fast cars and hot chicks is really my go-to thing. No, my husband got a job out here, and I was like, hey, I'd love to try to make money in entertainment instead of like doing it for the passion and the love of it. So I came out to LA.
Were you doing that in New York? Were you doing comedy for the passion and love of it?
Yeah, I was doing comedy mostly for the passion and the love, not really getting the big bucks.
Okay,
in New York.
but now you are in LA, right?
I mean, now I'm getting tens of dollars, so
Yes.
it's a real upgrade. But it's wonderful. I mean, I love New York. I'm from Connecticut, but my family's from Queens. I'm originally from Queens, and so
That's where I'm at.
Yeah, where are you?
I'm in Astoria, Queens, but I live in a hotel. I live in a hotel in Long Island City, and so now, because it's a little bit further west, I have an unobstructed view of the Empire State Building from my bed. It is gorgeous.
I mean, Long Island City is beautiful. The changes that it really is. I love Long Island City. It's the changes that have happened there over the last like 20 years are just insane. My family's from Forest Hills.
Oh, okay.
So no views of the skyline, but yeah, I was once dropped off in Long Island City before it was redone, and I had to like sue a taxi driver for just like leaving me in front of abandoned buildings and telling me that was my actual like location that I asked.
Did you sue?
I didn't sue, but I had to like, I reported it because I like had all of his information. I was coming from the airport, and I just thought it would be like a report, like hey guy, like don't just abandon young women in like, factory areas. And yeah, I had to like go to their special taxi court a couple times to be like,
oh my
hey.
Lord.
And I was like, I'm not trying to
Yeah, I'm not trying to get damages out of this guy. I was kind of a lawyer for a bit, so that's just a super interesting case. And the fact that there's a taxi court is just adorable. But it sounds like you're done with all that. You're in LA, and one of the things we're going to talk about today, I'm really interested in, is siblings in the disabled community. Like I actually saw, you know, an example of that on the way here, and it's just like, and I also have something. I think one of my best friends had a sibling in the disabled community, and so it was just very interesting to kind of watch and hear about and things like that. What can you kind of teach us about it for those of us who don't have firsthand experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I'm very passionate about. Obviously, disability is a very large umbrella. And I'm glad we're talking about it as disability now. It's a community that's come together. There's a lot of active advocates now, and people are looking out at, we talked a little before we started recording about TikTok. I think that there's a lot of representation on TikTok. I know of siblings, people in my sibling community that are representing themselves there. But I think that it's an experience that is often overlooked. People talk a lot about parents of people with disabilities, because it's a change that comes into their life. You know, they live however many years of their life, having typical experiences, and then a child comes into the world and kind of changes their view or their relationship with this community. Whereas those of us who are raised in it with siblings who have disabilities, I mean, we run the gambit. I'm not trying to say that everybody is super happy about being a sibling. My experience was very special, very close with my sister. And I'm very lucky that she was a wonderful person, you know, but that isn't everybody's experience. And I don't want to act like I represent all siblings.
You're like, sometimes a sibling's shitty.
Right.
Like
Sometimes
my
a
sibling was wonderful.
shitty.
Yeah. But no, man, my sibling, my disabled sibling is a real piece of shit.
I mean, people are pieces of shit no matter what their
Yeah.
situations are. Like, I think that you know,
Don't treat
I mean,
my sibling with kids' gloves. She knows she's an asshole.
right. I think that like we recognize that people in every group, some of them are assholes, and I think that because of, you know, inspiration porn, sometimes we forget that people in disability groups can also be assholes, because they are full people living full existences and running the gambit of personality types.
And it sucks, and they're dealing with
it
something that's a
sucks.
pain in the ass, right?
Yeah.
But it's like when you said inspiration porn, I forgot. Like I was like, oh, there's a subset of porn called inspiration porn, but I was like, oh no, you're just talking about the inspiration accounts that are just, you know, saccharine and just super inspirational. That's hilarious. There
Right. I
should be
mean,
an inspirational porn.
we should try to make inspirational porn. I mean, that I think that Hallmark movies are maybe that.
Yeah.
If there was more like, you know, totally nude sex happening in them. Like real penetration just in the middle of like Christmas Prince or something, then it would be inspiration porn. But
even that's kind of a good analog, because like I've noticed, like my mother was just listening to just some truly awful shit for hours, and I'm like, what are you watching in there? This is awful. She goes like, oh, it's a Hallmark movie or something, because it gets all nice at the end. I'm like, why are these people being so awful? Like, and so I think there's a certain subset of some of these melodramas that they're awful for 75% of it, but it's uplifting at the end. And I suppose, you know, disabled community is just like, yeah, man, my life is like yours, except it's 10 times harder. So of course, like, forgive me if I'm occasionally an asshole.
yeah, but also like I don't even know if it's about it being 10 times harder, right? Like I think oftentimes we dwell on that, especially because of media representation of just like these people are going through it, and it's not that they're
And
not
Meredith
going
Hackman's
through
like, it's
it.
not hard at all, dude.
No, it's
I love
not
this.
hard,
We're
no.
counter programming the whole, yeah, we're talking about disabled siblings. No, it's
No,
not
but I
that. They're
mean,
assholes, and it's not hard at all.
yeah, that's what I really want people to take away from this. Whoops, clearly this was the wrong topic to discuss. No, it is hard, but it is it can also be, you know, hilarious and beautiful and full of really positive experiences that you only get to experience because you're lucky enough to be a sibling. And some of the hardships, I mean, separate from being a sibling, some of the hardest times in my life are also some of the times I've laughed the most. I mean, sometimes those things just go hand in hand of really experiencing things together and kind of not necessarily having time for the bullshit because you are dealing with whatever you're dealing with. And then you could just be straight with each other.
Does it differ? Like we have some OCD in my family, some of which hit somebody very, very hard recently, such that it's almost kind of crippling. And, does caring for somebody with a disability change at all if that disability is not conspicuous to all?
Invisible disabilities, you mean?
Well, yeah, well, meaning of mental illness rather than, because mental illness, as you indicated, it doesn't have to be physical. Like, does it, does it become a different animal, or just is that something you don't have enough experience with to kind of speculate on?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to speak out of turn about things I don't know about, but of course, invisible disabilities present their own challenges because the world isn't making accommodations for you just by you entering a room. Like, not that they necessarily would if you present like you have disabilities, but and I mean, even just the basics of places having elevators that aren't, trash freight elevators, like just basic things like that aside of like the basic indignities that people aren't necessarily paying attention to. But yeah, I think accommodation is a big part of it, and having to go out of your way to be like, to constantly having to advocate for yourself of this is something that I'm dealing with instead of something that's obvious to you, an outside person. But I mean, I still think that people who present as though they have disabilities still have to advocate for themselves constantly. So
because sometimes accommodation is not made. And so in having this experience, you just further honed your comedy chops. And so are you trying to bring, have you at any point tried to make this stuff hilarious on stage?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's I I am definitely trying to put it a lot in my writing. It is a dream of mine to have a show that presents people with a variety of disabilities in a comedy. There's some great comedies out now that do represent disability that I'm really excited are on screen. But it's a work in progress, right? Like, I think with stand-up, it can be a little harder because if I have 5 minutes on stage, I don't necessarily have time to explain my backstory and relationship with the disability community before jumping into jokes that could potentially offend somebody. So
here's a TED talk for the first 4 minutes, and then
right. It's like, let me just give you tons of justification and backstory before I make one joke. It doesn't work quite as well in stand-up, but I think in my writing, it's become something that I feel very strongly about, and I've just met so many amazing people in the disabled community that I think deserve to be represented on screen.
And so you think that your best vehicle for this will be kind of shorter comedy films or just comedy specials where you actually cast people with disabilities, because it's not like in this day and age, if it was ever appropriate, it's certainly not now appropriate for Meredith Hackman to kind of pretend she's disabled on screen,
right? That would not be my goal. And I think that, I mean,
wouldn't be cool.
No, and there are great groups in Hollywood that are pushing for more authentic representation of actors with disabilities. There are plenty out there who are very talented and deserve to be on screen, and a number of people are getting cast in things. And I think just like with all representation, right, of groups that haven't been able to necessarily share their stories, we just need to get more out there and showcase more actors.
I thought you were going to go the other way. You're like, yeah, and it's awful that I cannot play a crippled person on screen anymore. I cannot play a physically disabled person. This is awful in this day and age. Cancel culture has run amok.
I'm not even going to support this joke because this is going to get clipped out. It's going to be out of context.
I'm going to clip. I'm going to clip this so hard.
That's going to be the one whole podcast.
Oh yeah, that one time she said that disabled people are assholes and it's not that difficult for them. That's all Meredith Hackman's going to be known for on the East Coast, Oh boy. But yeah, I mean, I also like the pre-show topic of people's inner lives, because if you can't spend your time talking about the disabled community on stage, because you have to preface it with a 4-minute TED talk, like, are you trying to kind of speak to your own inner monologue, or what about what on stage, as far as people's inner lives are concerned, what are you talking about, if anything?
Well, like, for example, last night I just had a terrible nightmare, and I feel like our nightmares are fraught with great jokes because it's where our anxieties go to play. You know what I mean?
So what
Um,
anxiety was this particular nightmare playing on?
oh, just all the good stuff. Just
Brian is prying. Okay, so what? Yeah, what are you fucked up about? What's really fucking
yeah,
up?
Brian, what are your darkest secrets? What do you fear? We've never spoken before. What's the worst thing that's ever
Yeah,
happened to you?
this is not being recorded and taken out of context. Please feel
Right,
free.
right. No, I think that that all of us are living with anxiety or fear or anger or shame or whatever. And kind of what I was saying before, that darkness does feed into comedy, but like I had a teacher in high school who I hated. She was my enemy. And she at
That
one
shouldn't be the
point
case ever. What was so fucked up about that teacher that she became your enemy?
well,
What?
at one
Yeah,
point I
she must
was
have been
like,
awful.
yeah, I was pitching a comedy that I was trying to write. She was a screenwriting teacher. And I was like, okay, so I'm working on this comedy. And she goes, Meredith, have you ever thought that maybe you like being funny so much because you're really sad inside?
Oh my
And I went, no, I have
god.
not thought that. I think that I like being funny because I like being funny. And screw all these people. They're like, you have to have a darkness. Like, screw people are like, let's watch about the sad life of I Love Lucy. Like, I think that comedians should be able to be funny and yeah, we're all people, we're all sad and anxious, we all have shit going on, and that can inspire our comedy, but that's not the reason we're funny as a defense mechanism necessarily. Some people are, but
Well, I mean, that stuck with you probably because there was I mean, it was probably totally so inappropriate and traumatizing for a younger person that it stuck with you. But was there any truth to it? I mean, whereas, I mean, you're kind of, it's kind of right in the sense that, yeah, I mean, you're right in that you don't have to be dark and you don't have to have kind of a dark personal life. But if you spend all your time being funny, I imagine some of it is, well, that's because I don't want to focus on the parts of life that suck, right?
well, I don't know. I think for me, a lot of leaning into comedy and loving comedy is just the escapism of it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, there is stuff that's going on in life, but uh it's not over. I'm not covering it up with comedy. I'm
Yeah.
bringing comedy into it as a way of experiencing it in a positive way. You know, I
Oh,
think that
okay.
that a lot of life is just about how you're looking at it and the energy that you're bringing to it.
I
I
like that though,
I
because it's
sound
like
so LA.
just having a vacation, like the word escape, like you
Hmm.
escaping from your life doesn't mean you're delusional enough to believe that certain parts of life no longer suck. It's like, yeah, I took a vacation from work and I know
Yeah.
after vacation I'm going to go back to work. It's not like I'm pretending work is over.
Right. No, and I think, and I love, sci-fi and fantasy, and I think that I love all of that because it's escapism. But I think that within that escapism, sometimes there are greater truths we learn about ourselves
Yeah.
and our experience than watching something really sad. It's like, I don't need to dwell in the darkness of life. I need to explore my feelings through something interesting and exciting. I mean, it's still self-exploration, even if it's not a one-to-one.
Dude, self-exploration, that's one of the subgenres of inspiration porn.
Right.
That's where you feel yourself to inspirational quotes. But like, I mean, do you find that when shit does get too real, like in a shitty Hallmark movie or something, you just don't like it, or you just have to be in the mood for it? Because I imagine, yeah, people who deal with real shit growing up, they
Mm.
probably love dark shit less than I do. If I've had a great childhood, I have a great childhood and stuff, so I can watch some dark shit and not have it, whereas other people be like, dude, I grew up with that bullshit. What are you watching a movie about alcoholism for,
Right.
when that was my growing up? And it's like, so do you find yourself avoiding real shit, or is there just a time and a place for it?
Well, I just want to be really clear. I also had a great childhood.
Okay.
I don't. You made a real assumption about my childhood.
Well, no, yeah, I imagine you did, and I'm not saying that, but
I
like,
did have a great childhood.
but yeah, if you've had a sibling in the disabled community,
Mhm.
I imagine that you'd be less happy to sit down and just to enjoy a 4 hour, deep dive on that subject. Cause you're like, dude, I live with this shit. She's an asshole and
Sure.
life is not hard for her at
No,
all.
my sister definitely not an asshole. She's amazing. But it is. I mean, my husband and I were literally just talking about this because I hate true crime. Like, I definitely don't want to sit around and watch like, oh, this is like real terrible stuff that can happen to you. Isn't that fun? And it's like 80% of the people watching true crime are women or some crazy number.
Yeah, weird.
And I do think that's shocking because it's like, I don't need to know what could happen to me. My imagination will take hold of that and run with it. But I think it depends. I think that truthfully, everybody's got shit, right? Like,
Yeah.
no matter how great your childhood was or how hard your childhood was, everybody's got shit. And I think that there's stuff that's gonna, be triggering to everybody. And it's just about taking care of yourself and your mental health. And if you're able to avoid things that are particularly hard, then go for it. But sometimes those things pop up and you work through it. And sometimes those things pop up in ways that you don't expect. I have trouble even watching comedies where it feels as though someone might be making fun of someone with a disability. I even if that's not necessarily what the movie or the show is trying to do, it's something that I'm sensitive to. And I don't begrudge anyone trying to make something that happens to trigger me. I just, separate myself from it. But that doesn't mean the thing itself is without merit. And I'm sure there's plenty of people with other, fucked up shit going on in their lives in their childhoods that would be fine with that movie. And it's something else that I'm perfectly fine watching. I just watched Single Drunk Female, which is brand new.
I watched both episodes last night. I loved it all.
I thought it was brilliant. And I was like, I mean, the title is insane, but I thought it was a really brilliant exploration of something very real, but also very funny, which appeals to me.
Is something you could do in the future with your comedy special?
I would love that. I mean, are you offering to pay for that, or?
You know me, podcasters are notoriously rich, but I love Sophia Delia Black. I loved her on the Mick, and I love the fact I was happy and then pissed off at the fact that Jeremy Jams from Parks and Recreation was in the first 30 seconds of that, and never again for 2 fucking episodes. But I really think Meredith Hackman is going to make the next Single Drunk Female.
Okay,
that's going to be
great.
with the disabled community, and we follow her everywhere. She's Big Mare, big_MER on Twitter, where I'm going to retweet all her funny stuff, but also on Instagram. Best place to cry at work, and give us the 1-second version of how the hell that handle came to be.
I mean, I was working and
working
hard.
At work.
I was trying to find a closet to cry in at work, and it was just the maternity room that was open. You know what I mean? You can't interrupt all those moms with your crying.
But I love it. The best place to cry at work is actually the maternity room. So we answered that question. So we also follow her at meredithhackman.com. We'll probably see show dates and stuff like that. So Meredith Hackman, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.